The story behind these preseason sessions is basically Mark and I decided we wanted to work together on delivering a holistic type of product for people like you on and focusing on safety. So the avalanche safety, off-piste safety side of things, as well as the technique side of things, because the better you ski, the more safe you are as well. And also if you get the right equipment and all that kind of thing. So we came together and we decided we were going to do some on-snow programs. But then we thought, well, we got to really prepare people a lot beforehand in order for those on-snow programs to be effective, and for people to really get the full potential of the courses we are planning on delivering in December and January. And then we thought, well, if we're going to give some sessions pre-season, we might as well open it up to everybody. And so here we are. And these sessions that we're hosting here are designed to really provide you all with valuable with value that you can walk away with and apply various different items as soon as you hit the mountain or even beforehand when you're looking at equipment and preparing yourself for the upcoming season. And another mantra that we're integrating is that you don't have to be perfect. Definitely on the safety side, I've tried to get that point across for years in my professional development and talking with colleagues. It's become, and looking at statistics, it's really clear. You don't have to be perfect to save lives or to stay safe. You just really need to be applying the key points. And it's the same thing with Mark and his technique. You don't have to be perfect to have a great time out on the mountain and have a great time. So here just briefly are, in the larger font here, are free webinar sessions that are coming up. And then also I mentioned that throughout the UK, we have at least these sessions planned at Ellis Brigham, late October and in through November. We've also adding on to that with joining Ortavox at the Kendall Mountain Festival, for those of you who are up there as well. Mark and I will be doing a session there too. So keep your eyes on our website, and UK Talks, I think, is the menu item now that we have for all of these various different preseason sessions. And here, I mentioned the on-snow courses. Just very briefly, there is two of them, one in December, one in January. That's also all on the website. The levels that we're aiming at as basically confident skiing, red runs, and linking 5 or 10 turns in fresh snow fairly confidently, and have some off-piste experience. And we realize that that's probably just one segment of the audience that we're going to have for all these preseason events. And this is not about selling the on-snow course, these preseason events. Of course, we'd love some of you to come along. Like there's a couple people who are viewing tonight are coming on to our on-snow courses, but again, that's not the aim with the sessions here this evening and the preseason sessions. We want to give you some really good, valuable, and make your time really worthwhile as you attend. So now we're going to get into just going to briefly introduce ourselves and then get on with the talk.
Should I start, Henry?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so a lot of you guys obviously have met Henry before, and some of you have skied with me before, but just as a background to it, really, Henry and I started working together actually a long time ago, very much at the beginning of our careers as pros in Val d'Isère. And Henry now has really developed this amazing international reputation as an avalanche awareness expert. He's delivered hundreds, if not thousands, I don't know, but definitely hundreds of talks, which have really educated the ski public, and also helps a lot of aspiring professionals when they're going through their education and going on to their final exams. So it's had a real impact in this area. And really importantly, his framework for sort of safer off-piste and ski touring has now very much become a standard. The great thing about the framework that he uses is it's really simple to use, very easy to apply. One of these, it's a framework that's just very easy to use. And it's been, his work over the years has actually saved lives. So that's an amazing legacy of what Henry's done. So it's just a privilege to be working closely with Henry again. When we first started, we were teaching beginners on nursery sites.
That's right.
And here we are, all this time later.
That goes back to before 1996. A few people have said that they've been to talks in the early mid-90s, and yeah, that goes back way back then.
Yeah.
I'm just going to introduce now Mark, and you have to excuse me. He's got such a lengthy CV here that I've had to take notes on it. But Mark, as many of you know, he's been an examiner and a trainer with Basie for over 25 years. So he's an ex-examiner and trainer now. But he's helped hundreds of trainees and instructors get through their instructor pathway. He spent most of his time in the backcountry. He's as passionate about the backcountry as I am and off-piste. And like many instructors, he comes from a race background, including myself. And he spent years coaching competition and trainee instructors in the art of going faster, which isn't necessarily, and it's rarely actually, the case for off-piste, isn't it? It's we want to kind of control our speed and slow it down a bit on the off-piste and enjoy it. But so now he's drawn on that experience to develop this philosophy of off-piste technique. He's going to share part of it tonight, a little bit more next week, and in depth in 2 weeks from now. Mark was also the founding director of ICE, the International Center of Excellence it was a ski instructor training program that many of you know about. Some of you probably did the course with him, and then would have done my sessions in there as well, because we worked together on ICE instructor training as well, helping people to get through their instructor exams. And one of the things I really like about Mark is he spent in terms of this overall holistic off-piste backcountry smarter sort of concept, is that he's researched the gear, and he calls it the what's it called, the rig, the combining the ski, the boot, and the binding. And he's got some really great insights on that. Tonight he's really only going to just touch on it a bit, but in future sessions he's going to go in more detail about that. So that's we're already going a little bit over our time, so let's move right into the presentation. I'm going to start with my little bit here and try to keep it to 15 minutes or maybe slightly less for once. So what I'm going to do is just give a piece of my Henry's Safety is Freedom framework method here. I'm going to show you briefly the overall framework and then focus in on a couple of the points. So the framework is basically divided up into 3 bits. That's where you go, that's decision making, how you go, risk reduction, and what you do in a rescue crisis kind of a situation. And there's a number of key points that, if applied, you can keep things acceptably safe out on the mountain. And the key thing is applying. And that's what this is all built around, because most accidents happen when people who did know better didn't apply the points that they knew from their training and experience. And this is something that I do. I'm not telling you should be doing something different from me. I do this all the time, and I have to stay on top of the applying side of it and make sure that I apply to make things acceptably safe out on the mountain too, so that we avoid situations like this. And how do we know we can avoid situations like this? Triggering avalanches, using such a framework with simple key points, is that the impact of those points is tremendous, given the fact that 95% of the time it's the victim that triggers the avalanche. So that's kind of good news. That means we can we can take steps to reduce the chance of an accident happening and reduce the impact of that accident if it does happen through rescue procedures. So I go into each one of those key points. I hit it in a little bit more detail, and I go over each one I have this on now on my featured video on my Henry's Avalanche Talk YouTube channel. So you can check that out there for a little bit more of a broader definition of each one of those key points. And each one of the key points, of course, has specific titles. And in our last webinar, what I focused on was in the decision making, the slope angles, and terrain traps. So steep slopes of 30 degrees or more. 30 degrees is the threshold at which an avalanche can occur that has any really bad, potentially bad impact on us, any consequences to us. And in terms of consequences as well, if you're on a steep slope above a terrain trap, then that can really lead to dangerous outcomes. And in fact, most years, half of all accidents, deaths happen because of people skiing on steep slopes, 30 degrees or more above terrain traps. Terrain traps are like holes, cliffs, and trees and things like that. And you can see that in our last webinar, which is also up on my YouTube channel. And then I also touched very briefly on the last webinar on the crisis management, what to do in a rescue situation. And that was the equipment and training. And so what we're going to do is terrain traps can make even little avalanches deadly. Yeah, so this was an example from the last webinar of the types of things. Even small avalanches can be deadly in terrain traps. But I also went over just briefly the crisis management side of things, where we looked at the equipment, the transceiver, shovel, and probe, and the training around that. And so we started with the equipment, transceiver that sends a signal and receives a signal, and this is all the essential material, the essential equipment that allows us to be able to get someone out from in our group in 15 minutes or less from under the snow, because that's when their chances of survival are at their highest. And we need to all have this self-contained companion rescue equipment in order to perform this rescue, this type of a rescue, if we weren't able to avoid the accident in the first place through the prevention, through the prevention points, through the decision making and the risk reduction columns. And so what I've done here is for this session tonight, I'm really focusing a lot on the training and what you should do if you're in a rescue situation. How can you get someone out in 15 minutes or less, or how can your mates get you out in 15 minutes or less, and if you're caught in an avalanche. So what I've done is I've put a sneak preview video, training video, up here for you to view, and that's going to be the next slide here, and we'll be back after this 8-minute video that follows also the pocket guide. It's a video. It's actually this pocket guide on video, and you can get this pocket guide at the talks that we're going to be giving in the UK, as well as on our website. You can order them through our website. So this is a pocket guide and memory aid, and this is the video that goes with it, or a sneak preview of the video. Off-piste and ski touring can be as safe as everyday activities if we apply the key safety points, the key accident reduction points. Rescue is important because sometimes we can't prevent the accident, but we can greatly reduce the impact that it has on the victims. We can save their lives if we act fast. Here's a short video summary of the pocket guide for self-contained avalanche partner rescue. The full version will be ready in November. Welcome to the Henry's Avalanche Talk Rescue Pocket Guide on video. This guide is for everybody, from a first-time learner or an experienced person who needs a refresher to a professional looking for a group training tool. It will help you to be able to perform a self-contained partner rescue in 15 minutes or less. Important because when someone is buried, by the time an organized rescue arrives, it's usually too late. It helps to have the HAT Avalanche Rescue Pocket Guide for training and remembering what to do in a crisis, but it's not essential here. However, an avalanche transceiver, a probe of 240 centimeters, and a shovel are essential if you want to get the buried person out alive. Why 15 minutes? Well, over 75% of avalanche victims die from suffocation, but the vast majority are alive if they're recovered in 15 minutes or less. After 15 minutes, survival chances drop drastically. First 15 minutes, search, probe, dig. Once an avalanche has happened and you think someone might be under, keep yourself safe. If you are exposed to further avalanche danger from above, move to a safe or safer zone. If you're going down to the rescue area, do not go onto slopes above where the victim is buried. This could trigger another avalanche that buries the victim deeper, and or it could bury people who are trying to rescue the victim. Choose another route down that doesn't threaten people below, like via the bed surface. Someone is buried. Everyone switch to search mode. Prepare for search. Choose a leader or your best rescue role if the leader is buried or if you are far from the group. Identify who is missing. Everyone switches all transceivers to search mode. This means switching the transceiver from the send mode to search mode. Start looking for clues on the surface of the snow. If you are a searcher, turn off your phone and keep it 50 centimeters away from your searching transceiver, or quickly give it to someone who is not searching and will be away from the search area. The searchers go to the place where the victim was last seen above the snow. This is what is called the point last seen. Start search phases. Others in the group who are not searching prepare shovels and probes. Keep an eye on the rescuers and monitor for secondary avalanches. Call for help if it won't slow down reaching the victim. Search phases. Search phases, signal search phase. The goal in the signal search phase is to find the signal transmitting or sending from the victim's transceiver while you are on search mode. Move at a quick pace, about the pace of a running, jogging kind of speed, zigzagging across the slope while maintaining no more than 20 meters approximately between switchbacks and 10 meters from the edge of the avalanche debris shown here in the illustration. Leave your skis on if it's not a flat area. In many cases, when the searcher turns their transceiver to search, they happen to be close enough to the victim to get a somewhat steady distance and direction reading right from the start, especially if the point last seen is very clear and not far from the end of the run-out zone. If you get a good distance and direction reading from the start, go right into the course search phase. Keep looking for clues on the surface: skis, poles, gloves, goggles, and sunglasses, and other things. Often a trail of those items leads to where the victim is buried, or they may actually be attached to the victim. Search phases, course search phase. Once you get a consistent distance and the direction arrow on your screen is steadier, you are moving into the next phase, the course search phase. Here you slow down because there is a delay in the time your transceiver receives the victim signal and when you get a distance and direction reading on your screen. Move in the direction the arrow indicates at a fast walking pace. with your skis on if there's a slope. Once the searcher, gets to about 12 meters on your screen, you slow down to a slower walking pace sort of speed, so you don't go below the victim. Search phases, fine search phase. When you get within 3 meters of the victim, you are in the fine search zone. Take your skis off if you still have them on. At this phase, the transceiver will only give you a distance. There will no longer be a direction arrow now. A cross-like symbol will appear on most models. The goal here is to confirm where the victim is not. Keep the transceiver as close to the snow surface as is comfortable while still moving. He or she is inside those points somewhere, approximately under the lowest distance that was shown on your transceiver. This is where you do the first probe. Hopefully someone in your team is ready to start probing already. Probing and digging, probing and digging, probing. Start probing at right angles to the slope, from the lowest distance shown on the transceiver. Keep your gloves on. From this point, insert probe quickly and purposefully at 30-centimeter intervals, moving in a square spiral direction outwards so that you begin to make a series of probe holes that form a sort of grid that grows like an outward spiraling square, like here in the illustration. The square gets larger and larger until you strike the victim. Leave the probe in place at the strike point. Then you start digging. Start by taking one big step downhill from the probe touching the victim. Probing and digging, digging. Top diggers dig on either side of the probe, now upslope of them. Quickly chop debris into chunks, digging towards the victim. Move snow to the sides first, then to the middle once the trench is waist deep. Other diggers take position downslope, one extended shovel length distance below each other. They clear the trench floor and replace top diggers when the top diggers are tired every 3 minutes or so. If the victim is clearly deeper than 1 meter, start with just one person in front to spearhead the hole towards where the victim is. When you get close to the victim, one top digger focuses on carefully exposing a body part and getting to the victim's airway. After 15 minutes, calling mountain rescue. At this point, hopefully you have managed to get to the victim's airway and someone has called the mountain rescue team. Here on the screen are the key points to tell the rescue team. So this is the kind of really good memory aid that's part of the pocket guide. You can tell the rescue team where, who, what, when, weather conditions, all these things that an organized rescue really needs to have to be able to come in and provide support. Remember, the best rescue technique is preventing the accident in the first place. For more info on prevention and making things safer out there so you can have more fun, see you on Henry's Avalanche Talk YouTube channel and on henrysavalanchetalk.com, where safety is freedom. And also want to emphasize how important it is to do the partner check. Everybody checking each other's send and receive at the beginning of the day. It really just sets the right tone and for the day in terms of people focusing on applying the key safety points. And it also helps to identify and reveal some people who might not even know how to switch over from send to receive. And that's something that I find on a regular basis in my position as a professional when I have people do this. And that would be important for you all as groups without professionals, if and when you do that, because of course these sessions are destined and aimed at helping you have a lot of fun off-piste with or without a professional. And so the partner check, as they call it at the beginning, is really important. And we're doing transceiver rescue training in the UK. I'm just going to go through this really briefly. You don't need to note it down. It's all on our website. under transceiver rescue training. Funnily enough, on the on our website under Backcountry Smarter. So that's what we looked at, is the equipment and training, the essential pieces to be able to, we talk about accident reduction, reduce the chance of further impact if an accident does happen. So reduce the impact of what the consequences could be if someone isn't taken out in a self-contained partner rescue, and that really means 15 minutes or less, aiming to be able to do that. And I also talk a lot about the human factor, and I work it in as part of this crisis part of the framework to start with, because a real problem in rescue is paralysis. People get so stressed out, it happens very quickly. Sometimes it's a sunny day, beautiful weather, and all of a sudden everyone's caught by surprise. And those who have trained have been shown to be able to get over that barrier and get in and implement the steps that it takes to get someone out from underneath the snow as quick as possible, and in that time frame of 15 minutes. Human factors as well, if they apply to what I say is the best technique for rescue is prevention. So use this framework to apply the key points, and this will make your off-piste experience potentially as safe as everyday activities, which is what I define as acceptably safe. And you can get it on the henrysavalanchetalk.com website. So that's the pocket guide for the prevention side, and the black and white one is our rescue pocket guide. Each one of them is going to have a video to accompany it. So what we looked at here was the intro, the 15-minute talk presentation from my part, and then we're going to move into Mark's presentation now on off-piste technique. You ready to do it, Mark?
Yeah, thanks, Henry. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen. So Henry, you might need to come off there.
Yeah, I've taken it off. This way we get a chance to say hello to everybody out on watching us. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for your patience here while Mark gets his side of the talk up. That's looking at off-piste technique, how to enjoy the off-piste more, and make it safer as well.
How are we doing there, Henry? You've got my profile up there?
Yep, we're all good.
All good. Yeah. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for that presentation earlier, Henry. I was thinking maybe giving 5 minutes for a written test, but I'm not sure we've got time for that now, so I'll just jump into it. Yeah. Okay, so just what I'm going to do is just go through my sort of methodology and the philosophy that I use when I teach, because there is a framework that I use as well. And the method that I use is been developed over decades. Really, it works really well, but always the main focus really is ultimately whatever is needed to get skiers better fast, particularly in the backcountry. And this came about, the whole thing came about with Henry, because Henry's strapline was safety is freedom, and making decisions in the backcountry and having a good understanding of the snowpack and so on is obviously crucial. But ultimately, another really big part of it is how safe are you as a skier, okay? So that's why this has sort of come about, really. The main method I use is something that I've developed, really, which is output focused coaching. So what does that mean? Essentially, it's about very much working on the outcomes. You know, what is the result of your actions on snow? What is your speed? what is the line that you're taking? Are you in charge of your situation all of the time? And it's pretty obvious really, but if you're totally in control of your speed and line all the time, then you're going to gain confidence in the backcountry. And I guess a really sort of simple way to sort of sum up the philosophy is, I'm sure all of you drive, and if you cast your mind back to when you were learning to drive, the driving instructor might have said at some point, okay, we're going to brake, but last time you braked at the lights, it was quite sharp. So next time when you brake, can you make it a much smoother braking action? And so the next time at the lights, you would have probably made a smoother braking action to control the speed of the car. What the instructor probably didn't say is, next time you're at the lights, I'd like you to extend your ankle joint and extend your knee joint. And my argument would be that that sort of example is where ski coaching has been a lot of the time. There's a lot of focus on movements and specific sort of maneuvers, and there needs to be very much the focus on the outcomes to achieve quick results. So those main outcomes really are control of speed and line, and it's obvious really, if you're out off piste and you're always in control of your speed, you're always in control of direction, you're going to have a great time, you're going to feel confident, you're going to be in charge of where you're going and what speed you're traveling. So that's really important. So I'm going to start off by delving into control of speed a bit, because it's one thing to just say, well, control your speed, but the next question is, well, how do I control my speed? And there's actually, to keep it really simple, there's two main methods of controlling speed. So I'm going to have a look at those. One of them is arc length and another one is skidding. So I'm just going to briefly explain that. So if you're looking at arc length, I've got a bit of a diagram here. So if you take one turn, then hopefully it will be an arc. And I think that in itself is a lesson, in that if you look at really good skiers, they're always making arcs or curves. Now they're moving from curve to curve rather than sharp, forced changes of direction. So if we presume we're in a curve, we're in that arc there, then as you go through the arc, then you've got various points where you can release and move into the next one. Okay, so if I move and if I release at this point here, I'm going to be going quite fast. If I hold onto the arc for a bit longer and release here, I'm going to be going a bit slower. And then if I hold onto it even longer, then eventually I'll stop. I mean, that all looks really obvious stuff. And actually it is, it's very simple, but this method of controlling speed by using arc length is super important. And what you tend to find with a lot of skiers, and I am generalizing a bit here, but is they've just got used to releasing at a point where it's quite fast, and then in the next moment they've got to make a really sort of quick braking maneuver to try and control the speed before moving into the new turn. If you release the arc at the right point, then you will flow into the next turn and everything will feel a lot easier. And in fact, if you watch good skiers, they're good at choosing when to release, and the result is that they will move from arc to arc, or curve to curve, just as another word of explaining it, and they will have a constant speed because they've chosen this right point to release from one turn into the next. The beauty of using arc length as a method is that all skiers have various levels of ability, and this really can apply from really early days. You know, you could just literally have learned how to make a turn, and then you can start using arc length as a method of controlling speed. So that method is really useful on big open slopes where you've got a bit of room, and we'll use it in most environments really. So arc length is one method, and if you're really good at this, you can create a constant speed even in quite challenging environments. So you may be able to spot this, but this is me skiing in quite steep terrain, very deep snow, and you're going to see me skiing through this sort of steeper terrain, and then it flattens out a bit, and hopefully you can see that I've adjusted where I've released from one arc into the next. So holding onto the arc longer here, gets a bit shallower, so I'm letting go of the arc a bit earlier, and the result is that I've got that constant speed. I'll just play that again. So definitely had to control speed on this pitch here. It flattens off a bit. I'm not holding onto the arc for so long, and then going back into holding onto the arc a bit longer for that section there. So that's one method we can use, arc length. The other really important method is skidding. And skidding can sometimes be seen as a sort of a bit of a dirty word in skiing, like we're always trying to avoid skidding, but actually skillful skidding is, I would argue, probably one of the most important skills that you need to understand and to use to be a safe controlled skier, particularly in sort of challenging terrain. And skidding is, again, it's another method which is really easy to use. Skidding is simply a case of, with your skis, turning them across your line of direction and getting them to scrape against the snow so you get a bit of resistance. It's a bit like, if you can imagine, when you're spreading butter on toast, you're trying to spread the knife across the toast, and it's got that scraping sort of sensation, and that's creating resistance, which is controlling speed. Skidding is particularly useful. I'd say more than that, it's more than useful, it's crucial when you're in steep terrain and narrow couloirs, and if it's on piste, more crowded sort of slopes. So this is another really important method. I've got a bit of footage here from one of the, maybe with us tonight, one of the skiers who was with me at the beginning of last season, and this, like any video footage, it always looks less steep than it is. But this is quite steep, challenging terrain, challenging snow, and we were starting to look at skidding as a way of controlling speed. So if you watch Ingrid come down here, you'll see that she's using a bit of skidding right there to control the speed. So there she's skidding. Okay? And the beauty of skidding is it allows you to control speed in a very quick time frame and in a very restricted area as well. So that's another really useful method. And when we're looking at methods of controlling speed and line, we'll often use a combination of those things. So we can end up using arc length, where we're steering up the arc, but we're also skidding at the same time to try and keep our speed quite low as we move through that arc. And all of these things are just imperative, really, for safe travel in all conditions, but particularly in backcountry skiing. And then another sort of leading on from there, another output, another result of our actions really is the ski. I mean, the ski is a fairly inanimate. It's just a ski. It's a tool, and the movements we make against that ski creates an action with that ski. So there's three things essentially we can do with the ski. We can edge it, so we can tilt the ski onto its edge or reduce that edge angle. We can apply or reduce pressure, and there's many ways of doing this, and I'm not going to go too much into it for this evening's presentation, but we can adjust the pressure on the ski, and we can also turn the ski as well. So we can rotate it. So if I go back for one example, for example, we were looking at skidding as a method of controlling speed. So I might be, running that session with the group. That's great. We all know we need to try and use skidding as a method to control our speed on a steep terrain. okay, well, we need to know, what are we going to do to the skis to make that happen? How are we going to use those tools? So if I was going to focus on skidding, we need to rotate the ski a lot. So we need to turn the ski a lot. We also need to have a low edge angle, and there will be pressure on the outer ski. Okay, it's predominantly going to be on the lower outer ski. But there's some parts of that that are quite important. Number one, you've got to turn the ski enough so it's against your line of direction. And number two, you've got to have quite a low edge angle. And this is an example of where things can often go wrong in steeper terrain. The natural reaction is on steeper terrain to go, oh my God, it's steep, I need to get loads of edge. And if you do get big edge angles, the ski will grip. And when it grips, it's going to send you flying across the slope, and you're going to accelerate, and then you'll have a loss of control of speed, which can be quite scary on steeper terrain. So understanding absolutely clearly what you need to achieve with the ski is, again, just so important if you're then going to achieve those outcomes of control of speed and line. Now, they're the main areas that you need to get right, so you can just be a really safe, controlled skier who's having a great time in the backcountry. It may be that when you're learning to do these things, that you know what method of speed control you're going to use, you know what you're trying to achieve with the ski, but it's still not happening. And if that's the case, then we would move into what I'd call inputs, which is really the movements we can make with our body, and also how we balance on our skis. I'm not going to delve into those too much at all, really, on this particular online session, but what I would say is that the important message here is the journey that I've started as the starting point, controlling speed and line and then action of the ski on the snow, and then the final bit at the end, if need be, is the movements that we make and how we balance. And historically, with ski teaching, very often the teaching starts with movements. And both me and Henry have experienced this, where we have skiers who've got a certain movement pattern in their head as a sort of mantra of that's what they need to achieve in terms of good technique. And then the result is the focus on is on movements, but they don't quite have the result that they need on their skis. So that was the overall summary of sort of the technical framework that I'd use. And very briefly here, just going to move on to gear. Just my background with gear is I ran ski tests for one of the UK's leading ski magazine for 20 years. So, and I still go to these ski tests every year. So for a long time now, I've just been really quite involved in terms of the gear side of skiing. That's a really that's sort of a background that I have. And I would say with gear, this is another one where we can talk about coaching, you know, can go in depth on coaching, but ultimately gear will have a massive, huge impact on your performance when you're skiing backcountry. I would argue it could have more of a input on your performance than good ski coaching. So it's really important that you get that right. So I'm just going to finish, just give you a quick overview on gear here. I did some quite in-depth video at the end of last season. This is just a really short clip of just one of the facets of gear that you need to be sure of for skiing backcountry. One of the key things with touring is that you've got to consider the whole setup as a rig in its full entirety. So classically, for example, if I went for a tech binding and a more ski touring specific boot, then I would match that up with quite a light, probably a bit narrower underfoot ski, and all of that would work really well. You've got a light ski with a light tech binding, with a lightweight boot, and the whole thing can work really well together. I mean, that would be right in front of me. That would be a great setup for long tours, hut-to-hut sort of work, all of those sort of scenarios. It would be a really good setup.
often what we see is it's quite easy to get pushed into making decisions where it doesn't quite match up. So, for example, if I had that Salomon MCN with this 80K tech binding, but then matched it up to quite heavy duty hybrid boots, then it's not really going to match, because you're going to have a boot that very much, it's a bit heavier, but it's going to sort of overpower the skin and binding a little bit. So that won't be such a well harmonized setup. And it can go the other way. You can have a tour specific boot with a really lightweight tech binding, but then if you match that up to a heavy duty wider ski, then the ski is going to overpower the binding, and to more of a greater extent the boot, so it's not going to work so well together. So this is really important. So if you're going lightweight, you've got to match lightweight ski, lightweight binding, and lightweight boots. And if you're going more down the hybrid route, it's the same really. You've got to go hybrid binding, hybrid boots, and it's going to invariably be more of a mid-range type of ski. And these are often the mistakes that we see people make when they're not quite matched up together. So it really doesn't work well together as a whole unit, whether you're going up or skiing down. One of the key.
Okay, just try and move you guys onto the onto the next slide.
Is that you've got to consider.
Okay, so yeah, that's just a bit of an overview on gear there, and then so finally, just as a summary, there is in terms of getting better for skiing sort of backcountry terrain. In terms of how I work, it's very much the focus is on outputs. So focus on outcomes as a priority, not complex movements. And just as a flag up here, you know, the main things are what's my speed, where am I going, you know, and what am I trying to get the skis to do? That's the main area to focus on, and we can really develop that and have a great time in the backcountry. And as Henry said right at the start of this, you don't have to be perfect to be a great backcountry skier. It's all about having fun out there. So hope that helps, and I'll hand over back to you, Henry, if that's okay.
Yeah, so we'll gear up now for the questions and answers, and so you can start asking questions and things now. I'm just going to wind things down with a couple little things that I'm going to share here towards just to finish off and give you a couple more pieces of information. So let's have the question and answer session now. And ask the questions in the chat box, as I said before, and we'll go on as long as you're, you know, as long as there's questions, pretty much within reason. I think if we get around midnight, we might have to close it down. I just wanted to get here. And thank our partners as well again. So there's a couple questions in here. What I'll do is I'm going to read out the questions. I've put everybody open. So I think, can everybody see the questions? Let me know that, and I'll see if I can allow everybody to see the questions, if that's all right. Pelle was asking me, when using the HAT framework pocket guide, what is the best way to determine recent avalanche activity if you are new to the area? That's probably a little section. I'm not sure if I'll get it next week, but maybe I could put it in next week. Some images of I'll make a note to myself. Images of recent avalanche activity. It's kind of clear fracture lines, because 95% of the time it's dry slab avalanches, and if you see the clear fracture lines, you can tell that they're fairly fairly recent compared to like a dull fracture line, and I will maybe put some images of that in next week. The other thing too is that if you look in the avalanche forecast that you can get from anywhere, and for the region, then they will. One of the first things I do when I look at the avalanche forecast after I've seen the danger level is if there's been some accidental avalanches. Most avalanche forecasts anywhere in the world, if it will mention if there have been some accidental avalanches. That means people triggering the avalanches. Natural avalanches, avalanche that happens all by itself. Artificial avalanches with explosives or other devices, and an accidental avalanche will be reported in most avalanche forecasts if it's happened the day before, a couple days before, and it gives an indication of the current stability. They'll say too, like if there was an accidental avalanche that happened at 2,000 meters on a west-facing slope or an east-facing slope or whatever. So that gives you a couple ideas there, Pell, and let me know if that didn't answer your question, and I'll get back to it. But we're getting lots of questions, so I'm going to move on to the next one. This one is saying, trying to have one ski quiver set up usually on a Ski Solomon QST 106. This is for you, Mark, I think. Are you listening?
Yep.
Can you see that on yours, Mark? What binding would you suggest? I was thinking the shifts I mainly do like day tours or half day tours with a very occasional hut to hut. This is right down your alley, Mark. So the question is trying to have one ski quiver kind of set up, and usually skiing on the Solomon QST 106. What binding would you suggest? Is it a shift?
It's a good question. Can you hear me okay there, Henry?
Yep.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that QST 106 is quite a good example. It's quite a reasonably sort of beefy ski. So I think, that is a good ski that would, and again, as I've mentioned right at the beginning, you've got to look at the thing as the whole rig. And I would say that 106 is a classic where it's well suited to what I would call a hybrid binding. So that's a binding where it's a bit stronger than a classic tech binding, and it'll have a better release system on there. So if you're skiing sort of inbounds as well, it will ski really well with what I'd call a good hybrid binding. There are some good examples out there. Just as Henry mentioned, the shift is a good one. Salomon have just recently changed the shift. It's now called the Shift 2, and they've made some really good improvements on that because there were some teething problems with the shift when it first came out. So they've made the toe piece slightly wider, the height adjustment easier, and so on. So it works really well. Shift 2 would be a good choice. And also another interesting one is the Marker. The name has escaped my head now, but Marker do a really good hybrid binding where it's a full alpine binding when you ski, but for going up, you literally just unclip the whole toe piece, and you've got pins there on the toe. I think another good one with that QST would be the Marker Kingpin. So the Marker Kingpin is another hybrid where you've got a solid release at the heel, but the toe is more of a classic sort of tech toe piece. Any of those three were good. If you're doing short tours, nothing too strenuous, and wanted a really good ski, I'd say the shift would be a good one on that. But make sure that you also match it up with a boot that matches that ski and binding rig. So if you matched it to a really lightweight touring boot, it's not going to work so well. It needs to be a hybrid touring boot. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and if the questions aren't answered in full, again, you can ask for clarification. But I'm going to get on to some next questions that were aimed at me. Why for probing? Why a square when you're probing the outside sort of spiral, or it's very square and not a circle? I've combined, and for that pocket guide, the rescue pocket guide, well, it's the same for the prevention one too. I've researched for years and years, North America, Europe, Scotland, all over the world. And what I've done is tried to pull out where there's been the most consensus. And for probing, the technique is a spiral. You can definitely use what the French call an escargot, which is the round. You know, of course, in France, everything has to be related to drink or food. So in France, it was an outward going circle. It's what Martin mentioned, why square and when you're probing and not a circle. It seems to be more commonplace that the grid method, I'm seeing that a lot more, whether it's Europe or America. And I used to sort of poke fun at the Germans and Austrians because it used to be much more that sort of technique came from the Germans and Austrians. And of course, when you're German and Austrian, I come from a German background, everything has to be quite square and not so sort of artistic. And so there's your answer for it. You can do either or. The next one is on crisis management. Why delay calling the mountain rescue? Other advice I've been given is call ASAP, especially a slightly larger group. And that last, especially a slightly larger group, you hit the nail on the head. If you have a larger group, then that you definitely allocate someone to do it. If you noticed, and I know there's a lot of information in there, every time I said delay, it's like call mountain rescue if it's not going to delay getting to the victim. For the conclusion that I've come from through my research, Europe, America, and personal experience, is that you do not want to delay getting to the person's airway. It's like someone who's drowning. If it's safe for you, you want to jump in and get them before you call. If you're just on your own, you want to do that on you and before you call someone and let them sort of take 10 minutes while they're sitting and drowning. But of course, every situation is different, and that's exactly what you implied. If it's a larger group, then you definitely want to call as quick as possible if there's someone allocated. If you're way, way away in the backcountry and there's only you and one other person and they're buried, just think of it yourself. If you were under and suffocating, hearing someone, because you can hear people really well on the outside when you're buried, and you're sitting there chatting away with mountain rescue. I prefer that they were getting down to me because I'm dying from suffocation or hypercapnia as they call it. Another piece of that answer is that in France and Europe especially, they tend to say call the mountain rescue up higher on the list. In North America, it's lower on the list. I think there's a combination of reasons for that. In North America, you tend to be more far away in the backcountry, and it takes much longer for the rescue to come in. Also, it's just different philosophies, and I always grew up, even though I've been living 35 years in Europe, my training has always been once you call mountain rescue, you're gonna and you've made that decision that you're gonna slow down the rescue or give it up and call mountain rescue. You're coming for a dead body. So that's the discussion on that, and there's always a big debate on it. And because you definitely want medical support in there as quick as possible, but you want to get to the person's airway. I know there's a number of doctors, like Laura is listening in on right now. She's ex A&E, and she maybe has a point of view on that as well. Although she's been having some problems, at least seeing the questions and answers. Maybe you heard me, Laura. It'd be interesting to hear your point of view of airway, getting to someone's airway versus calling medical support. And I imagine it depends, on the situation. If it's right next to the piste and you've got 10 people around, and the pisteurs can get in, the piste patrol can get in like sort of 15 minutes. They're so fast nowadays. Then yeah, you really want to prioritize getting someone to at least call mountain rescue while you're getting to the victim. There is just for me here too, is there going to be new stuff, or other than what's been discussed in this session in Covent Garden on the 28th? We're going to have a lot more time in Covent Garden. We're going to be there in person, and we're going to cover quite a bit more, especially in the in-depth, and I'll have a lot more time to cover each one of the points of the framework and focus in on various different aspects of the key points in the prevention and the rescue rescue frameworks. Does Mark have any tips for fresh powder? Any general tips for fresh powder?
Yeah, get it when you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, tips of fresh powder. I would actually go back to what I sort of said in the presentation. Really, is fundamentally the main thing is being able to control speed. In fresh powder, you can often use a bit more snow resistance as a method of controlling speed. You know, if it's hip deep, then what you'll find is that you don't need to hold on to the arc for so long. You can use a bit more snow resistance. I'd say deep powder is another classic where I've seen a lot of people sort of trying to bounce up and down, but they've ended up just sort of jumping up and down and going in a straight line down the hill and picking up more and more speed. In powder, to make the turn happen, the skis need to tilt over onto their edge so it creates a platform. So in terms of what you're trying to do with the ski, you're tilting the ski over onto its edge, and then you can just use a small part of the arc before moving on to the next one if you've got enough snow resistance. There's quite a lot to be said in deep powder. I think the other thing you've got to be careful with in deep powder is making too much of a quick rotation with the skis, because the snow just builds up and it can trip up. And in terms of pressure with the skis, this is for deep powder rather than sort of varied conditions. You do need to be careful with this sort of how much equal pressure you have with the skis. So if you have too much pressure on one ski, it will sink deep, the other one will flap around, and then it's really easy to trip up. So in terms of pressure, you're definitely using both skis more as one unit so that your feet are more equal in the snow.
Yeah, and to add that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but you mentioned like when you're trying to rotate your upper body around to turn in a direction that can often throw you off balance, and you get on one ski, and so both skis as one unit is
yeah. I mean, both
really
skis
important.
is one unit, a bit more, so it's a bit more even pressure. You're not holding onto the arc for too long. You're using a bit of snow resistance more as a method of controlling speed. But in terms of movements, you know, when you look at skiers, there's thousands of skiers out there who really are quite good in deep powder, and you'll actually see quite a big variation on how they move their bodies. The important thing is what they're doing to the skis and how they're controlling that speed when they're letting go of the arc and moving into the next one.
Okay, thanks for that, Mark. And just another one for you on your equipment wisdom. I've only ever bought downhill boots, and there's a lot of people in this category. So where are you going to go make that transition to a touring boot? So I've only ever bought downhill boots. Where would you go in the UK, Chamonix, Val d'Isère, Courchevel, or any one of the Italian or Austrian resorts to try out boots that I can walk in and ski on piste with family? Should I buy my own skis and bindings too? It's got so expensive to bring them on a plane. I've tended to hire in recent years, but with downhill bindings. And I think I'm just going to chime in, and you take over. I found I've got a couple pairs of boots, and the one that I find is it's almost like a downhill boot, but with the touring little eyelets, as I call them, is that Lang XT. Is it the XT Tour? What's the name of it again?
Yeah, XT3, I think they call it now. Yeah, but
it's like a piste boot. It's like a downhill boot, isn't it? But you can fit it into a binding.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with boots now, with the latest touring, what I'd call hybrid boots, which are sort of a mix between a touring boot and a downhill boot, the performance is unbelievable now. So they will ski pretty much as well as a normal alpine boot. However, what I would say, just from when I was listening to the question there, is one thing that sometimes gets forgotten with this is there's still frame bindings out there, which is where you could still use your downhill boots that you probably love, and if it's your first experience of touring, you can use what's called a frame binding, where it's literally a frame that sort of clips to a classic alpine binding. They're definitely not as good to use as normal hybrid or tech touring bindings, but it can be an option just as that first introduction where you don't really want to spend any money on it because you're not sure if you're going to enjoy the whole experience. In terms of where to go, we're looking at what resorts to go to for this, because
or in the UK is the question too.
Yeah, for equipment, yeah. So I think in terms of equipment, all the major brands are a lot better with this now. You know, obviously we work with Ellis Brigham, and they would be a good example. They've got a real good level of expertise now and a good range of equipment.
And the range is huge. I mean, we talked about this. At least a third of the boots in Ellis Brigham on the wall are touring hybrid type boots, aren't they? Well,
yeah, and this
is talks there.
Yeah, and this is what I get into, and there's more of an in-depth video I've done onto it. And I think this is where it gets really confusing now for skiers. There's almost too much choice out there, so they need clear guidelines as to where to go and how to make those right choices. Also, further north, anything technical they're in Kendall Way. They're really focused on ski touring. They're a good retail outfit as well. And I think if you're going out to the Alps, then actually, to be honest, any of the big main resorts, you're going to have some really good knowledge and expertise in the shops. So you can go with your normal downhill boots if you use a frame binding. If you want to really have a go at touring kit, you will be amazed at the performance that you get from these hybrid boots now. They will literally ski as well as a classic alpine boot. You can also use them in different bindings. So if they've got what's called a grip walk sole, you can use them on a classic alpine binding as well. Yeah, so this new level of boots that we have out there are phenomenal, really.
One of the questions there, Mark, was that should I buy my own skis and bindings too? I think what Sean is asking there is that you know, am I really kind of taking too much of a chance? Sounds like he wants to do it, but he's afraid of just like getting too specialized. But what I was going to say is like what you said. You can get and what I said at the beginning with the Lang XT that I have. I forget the name of the exact model, but that with probably like a shift binding or something like that, and more of a heavy duty ski. I'm taking your advice. You could ski that just about like any, you know, almost like any top performance. Well, I wouldn't go so far as a top performance piste ski because that's a racing ski, but it would still be a high performance ski, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. Totally. You can't go that far wrong now, really. But just make sure that it's what I'd call a hybrid setup, where you've got, you know, quite a strong touring boot with a strong binding, and a shift would be a good example of this, with more of a sort of a heavier duty touring ski, and that will ski really well in bounds, and for skinning up, going up, you know, as long as it's short, you know, like hour and a half, something like that, would be fine. It's only when you go for more longer tours, hut to hut use, that you probably need to go more down the road of really sort of lightweight technical touring gear. But my advice would be go for it. You can maybe get in touch later if you want more, you know, more specific advice on that. But the performance is really good now on this hybrid gear.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons what we're going to be doing in the stores as well is providing people the, you know, opportunity to, and us the opportunity, especially, well, you, Mark, to to demonstrate, just take the skis off the wall and the boots and the blanket?
Yeah, we can go full in depth in the store and
Yeah.
use the gear they've got.
So I'm just going to go back to some other questions that were aimed at me, and that was there was a question about, is it easy to know when you hit a human with a probe? I there's there From what I understand, I was just going to say I have not had the the very sad, or I guess it would be happy if it's someone who's alive. But I've been next to people who've hit someone in a probing line years ago with someone who didn't have a transceiver, and the search had been going on for hours. We were hundreds of people. And they seemed to know right away. There was a couple of false alarms or false positives, but I think that people just wanted to be completely sure. But there was hundreds of people probing, and when that person was hit, I didn't feel them. The person next to me wasn't all that experienced. Really felt it was a soft, somewhat soft object, and very sadly they were not alive. Because of the time it took to find them. You can practice in a lot of resorts have these little snow parks. They're becoming less and less popular now, and I think the reason is that they're hard to maintain, and they get vandalized. But in some of these parks, what they've done is they've buried a piece of wood, or a rock, and a sack of potatoes, things like that, and that gives you a chance to feel the different objects. And what I do in my training is I put a backpack underneath the snow to feel, and that feels somewhat close to a person, and you really can feel the difference. Getting back to the question about when to call the organized rescue professionals. I had from Laura, who's an A&E doctor, and knows a lot about first aid and emergency rescue too. Her comment was to just definitely have the phone number of the pisteurs, the Peace Patrol rescue services, in your phone. And on that note, that's something that I've changed in my advice, is not only having the local local Peace Patrol, but also the number that I put on my pocket guide, which I believe is 112 in France. There's a couple different in Switzerland, and certainly different in America. Because I know that 112 in France, you'll get to a rescue services that can home in on your phone as well, and I don't think they have that quite yet in the local rescue. But the benefit of calling the local rescuers is they know the resort. So if you notice at the very end of my video, it's a very good idea to be able to communicate your coordinates, and to know where you are. So again, with or without a professional, it's really important to communicate with your guide, and choose your guide in terms of that too. Someone who's willing to talk with you, communicate with you about where you're going, and all of these safety aspects. And I've done a lot of work with surgeons, and in the surgical safety world, they've taken a lot of their prevention methods from the aviation world, and the aviation world emphasizes both in the military and civilian the importance of a co-pilot, because when you're focused, like a professional Mark, me, or an airline pilot, or often you're like and a surgeon, the same thing. When you're really focused, there's tons of stuff that you miss, and some really obvious danger signs are missed, and you depend on other people to chat with you, and so you can stand back and see things in a larger sense. So having a co-pilot in an appropriate way is important. And the way I see that in groups is to be co-pilots for each other. And I think that every group should see each other as co-pilots. And with a professional situation, it's a little, the dynamics are a lot different, but you should choose someone who is receptive to discussion, and you talking about various different things so that you can subtly or not so subtly point out things that you think may be dangerous. And in the UK, when you phone 999, your phone will send your coordinates to the call handlers automatically. So thank you for that comment, Sean. And I think that's the same also with the rescue services than on 112 in France. Right. There's not any other questions. Have I missed any questions, or does anyone want some clarifications? Because I think we've got through most of the questions, unless I've missed out on anyone's, which I apologize. Maybe there's some stuff in the Q&A. Suggestions for an app for slope angle and orientation and maybe mapping routes now that FatMap is no longer. That is going to be the subject I'm thinking about. Next week is maybe a little bit on the early side for it. Does anyone have, I have a list of them, and I just, you know what, I'd rather have the list in front of me before suggesting the suggestions for slope angle and orientation on maps. Remember, for those of you who aren't necessarily all that familiar with slope angle and judging slope angle through with applications on maps, you can get maps, and I showed this in June. You can go back to the June webinar when I talk about the slope angles. I showed a map with different colors on it, like 4 different colors, and there was a color that showed when you were getting into 30-degree slopes, and then above 35-degree slopes. So above 30-degree slopes, above 35-degree slopes, above 40-degree slopes, and above 45-degree slopes. And that can really be a very useful tool. I'm going to talk about that, I think, next week. And is there such thing as totally safe areas and safe and safer areas? And a lot of that depends on managing slope angle and a big you're at a big advantage if you can have a map with that has these applications that show in color coding where there are slopes of steeper than 30 degrees. Steeper than 30 degrees. 30 degrees is the threshold at which the slope steepness threshold at which an avalanche can release from that will have consequence to us. So if you're in an area that doesn't have any 30-degree slopes above you, around you, or below you, you're actually in a no-risk zone. It's very helpful to be able to identify those areas if you want to stay in them, or at least if you want to be able to stop and move onwards when you're touring up or down. I use a it's called IGN Rondo. It's not a very well-known app. And I like the color coding of it because it's really simple. It's not very modern where the shades of color go gradually. It's really the colors are only 4 colors, and it goes very abruptly from nothing to 30 to 35 degrees, and then 35 degrees to 40 degrees has its own color, and I'll show that next week. IGN Rondo is what I use, and I was afraid almost even to mention it because it's not one of these high-flying, even, FatMap was amazing. It was really dynamic. But I'll show that next week, and I'll try to do a little bit of research for now that FatMap is not around any longer. A lot of people were using that. What are some good apps for the color coding of slope angles and the slopes? So thank you for that question. Then someone was saying, wasn't sure whether I should put this here or in the chat, so it's a repeat question. Why do I recommend probing in square spiral rather than circular? And another question, and I'm just going to the Q&A, so please, people, if you can, stay in the chat. I know it's counterintuitive because it doesn't say questions and answers, and this is a question and answer session. It's just easier for me to go through it in the chat session. There was a question with respect to hybrids, and we're coming back to you, Mark. I've talked enough, I think, in this little monologue. With respect to hybrid boots, Are they always heavy? What are the options for small women who prefer lighter skis?
Yeah, I guess heavy is the wrong word for it. I mean, they're heavier than a real lightweight technical touring boot, and often the lightweight technical touring boots will have a lot more carbon in their sort of makeup of the clog or the cuff. But actually, so they're heavier than a classic touring boot, but they're a lot less weight than a normal alpine boot. So they're sort of in the midway. Um, there's masses of choice for women skiers out there, and I'd say this is the same for any boot really. You just need to make sure that you see a good boot fitter, and that boot fitter would first of all need to look at your foot shape, because your foot shape will suit certain brands. So rough and ready for quite narrow feet, then a brand like Lang works quite well with narrow feet. If you've got a broader foot, then a brand like Technica can work quite well with that. So the boot fitter's job is to make sure that the shape of your foot matches the last and shape of certain brands. So once you're steered into a certain brand, then every brand will have really good hybrid options out there for you. And I think the other thing that's happening with hybrids now is the range that you get back on the cuff when you go into touring mode is getting bigger and bigger. So a lot of these hybrid boots now, they're getting much more effective for going up as well as skiing down. So yeah, hopefully that helps.
All right. Did that answer your question? That was from Sue. I think that's a good question. And I think yeah, the whole hybrid thing. I mean, they don't necessarily have to be heavy artillery, do they? Hybrid is kind of covers that. Yeah, that.
Yeah, they're not heavy. They're not. They're literally in between an alpine boot and a lightweight touring boot. It's a really good compromise.
Great. And then there's one other question. What general recommendations can you give on gear for a taller, heavier skier?
Yeah, it's difficult to answer just with that information, because my next question would be, well, what sort of backcountry skiing are you looking to do? And your answers to that would then open up which area to go down. I think I come back to what I said actually a little bit before, is that if you're doing long ski tours with a lot of hut-to-hut work, or you're looking to maybe go up regularly for 3 hours, something like that at a time, you do need to go down the route of what I call more technical. So it's what we'd call a lightweight tech binding with a lightweight touring boot and a lightweight ski. If you're looking at more what they used to call sort of slack country sort of touring, where you're doing maybe an hour and a half, hour, something like that, always staying quite close to resort, maybe skiing in resorts a little bit, then you need to, I would say, go down the hybrid route. And so it's really that decision is important. Are you going to go for more technical, or are you going to go for hybrid? And whichever way you go, then your first stop comes back to your feet, and you need to see a good boot fitter who will get you in the right brand of boots that will match your foot shape. And then the other decisions in terms of binding and ski are quite easy ones. And I think also in terms of binding and ski, the model that you choose, I just can't give that, because it really depends on your skiing ability as well. So I'd sort of need more information to give an absolute definitive, this is what gear would be good for you. And these are good examples of things that we can cover more on the face-to-face presentations with Brigham's. When we're there, we can see you have more of a chat, and we've got all the gear to hand that we can have a look at.
I think I know the person who asked that question is based in southern Sweden, so I don't think they're going to make that, but we can have.
Okay. Okay.
I think it was Per for you can ask us, send us an email and Per, and we'll sort that out. And that's exactly, it's these questions and these conversations are exactly why we're doing these preseason sessions. And it'll make it just so much more fulfilling the courses we do this winter, and then most of you aren't going to be doing our courses, and hopefully many of you will. But the reality is that a lot of you are ski on your own without professionals or whatever. These kinds of things, getting all these things kinds of sorted out before the season, especially the equipment side of things, is really really helpful. But also the map kinds of things as well, and that's why I think I'm going to not go into mega in depth next week, but I'm going to touch on that subject of slope angles and helping to find the what I refer to as the no risk zones and how to identify those. And it really just comes down to terrain, and it's actually being discussed very openly and commonly amongst the international avalanche safety community that in fact it's probably better to emphasize managing terrain than trying to manage reading the snow. And that's a tough move for snow scientists and snow specialists to move towards, but it's in terms of accident reduction and safety, terrain is really where it's at. And there's a couple other questions here. Many thanks. Well, there's a comment. Many thanks. We're kind with our time. That's great. Thank you for that. And enjoyed and appreciated all the info. So someone's got to go and have some. I think dinner is calling, and so yeah. For if you want family members to come and watch. Have them come along to the webinars or one of the talks if they're within geographically reasonable distance. And so that's very encouraging. Thank you for that, Sean. And then Josh is asking, can one hire or try these kinds of things before with these boots? Yeah, one of the nice things, is well, one of the nice things about a resort that has that is that has shops, like the big off-piste and touring resorts that have that reputation. They generally have a pretty good selection. But this is a Mark question. So can I hire or try before buying these kinds of things?
Yeah, well, in principle, yes, but to be honest, the reality is often no. Boots in particular, it's really difficult because even really good shops will have a good range of ski touring boots, but it often depends on size and what sort of suits your foot shape. You'd definitely be able to try the hybrid sort of bindings and skis, no problem, because all good shops will stock that sort of gear. Boots can be a bit more of a tricky one. And I actually think with boots, it's one of those, we're still in a world really where you've just got to put your trust in a good boot fitter, because often the boot fitter will have to need to do a fair bit to the boot to get it right specifically for you. And so they'll have to do a certain level of customization before you then go out in that boot. But also I think with many boots shops now, most of them really, they've got these comfort guarantees where the boot fitter is really backing himself or herself and saying, look, trust in me, I'll get this boot right for you. And if there's any problems, bottom line, we'll be happy to exchange the boot. But in terms of hiring and trying, it's the boot that is more of a challenge with that one.
Okay, so in some way it works with the skis. You can rent pretty easily skis and bindings, but the boots are more tricky, huh?
Yeah.
And there's another one for you, Mark, that's in the same sort of category. how can you find a lighter set of skis for the ascent, which don't flap and feel mega light and on the faster and more technical descents? I think that someone wants their cake and to eat it too.
Yeah, but you know what? I think we're getting much, much closer to that point where we can, to be honest, because certainly over the last 3 years, there's been really fast developments on the materials that they use in skis and the sort of the structure and the frames and the shaping of it all within the ski itself. So I did the ski tests last winter for testing this next year's gear, 2026 gear. And I was really amazed actually with some of the skis we tried, which were very light, but actually had really good contact and a good feeling underfoot for skiing on the downhill. That was not the case even 5 years ago. You know,
Okay.
5 years ago, if you choose a super light ski for going up, it's going to be really flappy and nervous on the way down. That is not the case anymore. The only downside, I would say, with some of the newer gear that I tried is I think sometimes, and this is more my personal opinion and from experience of what I've seen happen on tests, is with the new technologies, some of them can be a bit more fragile in terms of impacts from hitting rocks or things like that. So that may be something to bear in mind as well.
Could you offer a suggestion? Because I think that's probably going to be, I'm anticipating what they're thinking, and it would be the next question. Could you suggest like a particular model? And a question, an honest question for me is should you always go for like carbon, for example?
Yeah, well, there's a mix of materials that they use now, and a lot of the lighter ones use carbon, but there's other materials they use, and it's also the sort of the placement and the shaping of those structures that has quite an impact on the ski as well. Yeah, if I was being specific, I think something like as a brand that we all know quite well, actually, fun enough, the latest Salomon MTN is quite a good example of a ski which uses a lot of light materials, but actually is good fun to ski. You know, it uses a lot of lightweight carbon, but actually with the shaping of it, it's good fun to ski as well. So that would be the first one that comes to mind. But to be honest, I'd have to sort of go back through my list. When we do these tests, we ski on 8 different pairs, or 8 to 10 different skis a day over a period of a week. So there's quite a lot of gear that you go through. But that Salomon MTN would be a good example. I also think Black Crows are doing some really good lightweight touring skis, which still have a really good feeling underfoot as well. I mean, if I'm being honest, I mean, all the big brands are all good, and I'd be less suspicious of super lightweight skis than I used to be.
That's a good way of summarizing it, and that's interesting to hear. I was being a bit facetious when I was saying he wants his cake and eat it too, but maybe that's the way things are moving. Because I guess
it is.
Seeing the increase in demand in the market, it looks like the ski manufacturers are really trying to respond to that demand. I mean, I've seen figures like I think we put it in our press release for all of these sessions we're doing. There was what was it 6 to 10% increase from one year to the next, from 2023 to 24, 20 something like
Yes.
that, in terms of sales and new entries into the off-piste and ski touring.
Yeah, I mean, it's for good reason that there's a lot of choice out there. The manufacturers are only putting money into it because the demand is there, and it's one area of skiing which is still growing. So that's why they've put a lot of R&D firepower into it to produce great products. I mean, I do think if you're looking at, well, I think all equipment is moving on, but particularly in that arena of ski touring, and particularly in that arena of hybrid, what I'd call hybrid kit, it's moved on massively over the last few years. So you'd be really surprised at the performance you can get from this skier.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks for that answer. And our numbers are dwindling a little bit. We still have about 25 people who are on, and we're committed, as we said before, to fielding questions, and so we can continue onwards with any clarifications or questions. I think we've gotten to everything that's been asked so far, and in the meantime, if you if you appreciated this webinar, then spread the word around. I'm going to get it up onto my YouTube channel hopefully by the weekend, and maybe before. I'll do my best to get that sorted so you can share it around. Like a couple people wanted to share it with their friends, and so you can make them aware of that, and also the other preseason sessions that we're doing, not only in the Ellis Brigham stores, but we have those transceiver rescue training that we do. I don't know if you noticed, it's in London, Manchester, Poole. We do them in Sandbanks Beach. That's a great way to spend a November afternoon in any of those places. And I forget what the times generally are, sort of 11:30 for about 3 hours or so. So you get tons of time and tons of opportunity to train with single searches, double searches. We don't go that deep into the digging. We do demonstrations above the ground, and but it's a great afternoon, and you really it's a great refresher, and you're not losing skiing time on that. And it generally ends up in the pub and a couple pints afterwards with all kinds of banter.
And just as an aside, I'm also going to be at the Northern Ski Show this coming weekend, so I'll be in Manchester. It's at the sort of snow centre there. It's a really big show that's going on. So I'll be there with Dynastar skis and Lang boots. So if any of you are around there, then feel free to grab me, and be great to have a chat and meet up.
Lots of kind messages coming through, so thanks for that. Okay, well, I think the numbers seem to be dwindling down to the low 20s and dipping under 20 now, which is great. But I'm getting the sense that it's a good time to start winding things down, unless there's any more burning questions that people have, or anything that you feel that you forgot to say that afterwards you wished you said, Mark. There's always something I wished I said or clarified.
Yeah, there's always something, but I think, I think that's been certainly from my perspective, it seems like it's been a really good session with some great questions. And in the UK, certainly dinner is probably calling for a lot of the guys. So probably a good time to wrap up. But it's been a pleasure.
So again, this is where we're going to be online and in person. So just an overview, other than the rescue training that in London, Wimbledon Common, and in Manchester as well. At the Sale at the water near. That's the big, nice, beautiful park there near the river. I forget what it's called. But I've had the pleasure of going and doing some training there numerous times. And also remember, we're going to be at the Kendall Mountain Festival. That's a fantastic festival. And what else? Anything else?
That's it, I think, Henry.
Okay, well, thank again our partners for their support. That really helps us to be able to be as generous as we possibly can with our time and knowledge. And thank you all for your knowledge. There's a couple of really interesting points that people made, and leading questions like the when you should call the rescue. That's always a big point of debate. And so thank you for everybody for your very knowledgeable questions and also comments. Also on the maps, And I believe next week what I'll do is I'm going to touch on, as I said, the no risk zones and using different techniques for measuring slope angle. I might touch on that quite briefly and see how that goes. So thanks very much, everybody, and looking forward to seeing you soon here on Henry's Avalanche Talk and with Mark, where safety is freedom and backcountry is smarter. Thanks very much, everybody.